That dazzling duo.
Yeah.
Plough. Episode 6 are we up to now?
Yeah. Episode 6.
It's been a nice last 6 weeks, man. Today we're going to be tackling how to write interesting, sick, fat bass lines. An important question is, can you slap at your bass? I know I can. I know Eric Whitaker can. But can you?
Nice. Got in there early with the Whitaker.
Yeah, I thought I'd get over and done with just in case I forget later on.
Yeah.
But I think bass lines, whether it be the actual guitar bass or a double bass or one of the low string instruments in an orchestra, or even just the bottom voicing and whatever your chords are, it's a very important thing towards overall compositions and overall playing of music. So I figure it's probably something that a lot of people struggle with to get inventive on, especially from the rock genres. I mean, I think it's safe to say that you and I have grown up playing mainly rock stuff, right, Reece?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then I guess genres that have come out of that, and we dabble with other things and try and learn from other areas. We've both got an interest in film, choral music, jazz, and that kind of thing. But I think we can share some of our general approaches to bettering bass parts, and maybe just to give people a few different angles they can tackle bass writing. Because especially if you're playing in a band with a lot of guitar riffs, the bass kind of gets lumped in with following the guitar if you want to thicken up that beefy sound. So maybe we can talk about what to do in some of those scenarios to spice it up. And maybe sometimes it actually is better just to follow the guitars are doing. So.
Oh yeah, there's a situation for everything.
Yeah, man, of course. You got any opening words? Maybe it's like the first thing you like to consider with bass lines, or something you want to start tackling with?
Well, I've actually got an example that I can start us off with, if you'd like to do that.
That'd be great, man.
Yeah, all right. Let's see here. So the first thing that I've got ready here, it's not a bass line that I wrote. It's a bass line that our mutual friend Anthony Stewart wrote. This thing right here. And it's a pretty interesting bass line because, as you can probably see, it's a bar of 6/4 and a bar of 9/4. Well, let's have a quick listen to it. Okay, so it's that phrase, it keeps looping. And what I'll do, I'll play it again just on my guitar here so you can hear it a little bit more clearly. Yeah, so a bar of 6/4, a bar of 9/4.
Do you want to bring it back up on screen, man? You got the chart there. It might be cool to understand what's going on there.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, bar of 6/4.
Yeah. So it looks like it's an E minor, right?
Yes, E minor. That's correct. So
with Neapolitan chord or whatever at the end.
That's right. Yeah, because he did this chromatic rundown at the end, and that seemed like the most obvious choice to go with.
So tell us about the order of which parts are written here, man. So I think that could be quite important for people to see.
Yeah, so this was a bit different for me. Usually I'll come up with the chords first, and the bass line is not an afterthought, but it's something that comes after, after I've got a melody, and sort of I try and get some counterpoint happening with the melody and stuff. But in this particular scenario, Anton wrote this bass line of his own accord, and I thought that is a sick bass line, and I tried to work it in somehow. So the first step was just trying to harmonize it. And so I was looking at like where the notes on the strong beats, like what sort of harmony they were trying to imply. So all of this, you're going between E's and octaves over here. And then here, you've got like a fourth, but otherwise I'm hearing more the fifth and the octave here again.
Mm.
And then you go back to it. So all of that I just went over the minor 1 chord, E minor. That was easy enough.
Yeah.
But then the next one, he goes back to the 4th, the A, and then rather than going to A minor, which was my first thought, it was a bit too vanilla for me. So I treated it as the 5th of a D chord, and that worked quite nicely too. Because as you keep going, you have the G over here, which resolves down a half step to the F sharp, which is now your major 3rd in the D chord. And then finally, at the end of the phrase, it actually slides up to the D. So you finally get the root at the end of the phrase.
So you're with this part, right, that the bass is written first, even without a beat there?
Yeah, that's right.
So you heard Anton just write a bass line. So this is a good example of where the bass is driving the rest of the writing. And obviously the opposite can apply just as easily.
Yeah, that's right. Going beyond that, the start of the second half of the phrase, it's the same notes right up until here, actually. But I didn't want to just repeat the E minor and the D. That would sound a bit too, yeah. So I instead went with the C add 9, which is a pretty common move for me when harmonizing something, sort of dropping the root note down a 3rd. So in this case, the E coming down to the C. And that usually works quite nicely, harmonizing stuff like that.
Submediant, bruh.
That's right, yeah. And then, where before I said that with the first time we got to this A here, I tried to avoid going to the A minor and used it as the 5th and the D. In the second half of the phrase, that's exactly what I did, so that you hear that note a bit differently then, in a different context.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lastly, he went to a C here, so something that I hadn't really done much up until this point. Yeah, I treated the bass note as if it was the 7th of a chord, so that C is the 7th of that D7 chord.
And that's falling on the beat as well, man. That one, it's falling on a strong beat.
Yeah, that one's on the beat, so that's a strong beat there. And then that walks down, and then this is where I said we have that chromatic thing. So he ends up landing on that F, which I harmonized with plain, simple F chord.
So if you can leave that on screen, man, just because it's kind of links to something which I think is really important. It's kind of something we spoke about on a previous time.
Yeah.
About writing bass lines using the pentatonic scales. And what I hear you saying with that is that you've looked at you're looking pretty much at the note functions, right? You're thinking, how can I come up with a chord that will fit with this, harmonize with this, so that the bass line has a different function against these different chords.
Yeah.
You can see with nearly all that line, right? Everything's based off the root, the octaves, the minor 7ths, 4ths to 5ths, and minor 3rds for the most part, right? So that's pretty much your E minor pentatonic, that kind of thing. So
with occasional
with the 9th in there as well, right? With it.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty common scale. Like a lot of times you'll see people using minor pentatonic with the added 2nd in there. Just leaving out the 6th, because the 6th is kind of like you usually got to use the 6th in the chord. It kind of spells out the mode, or it spells out the sound a little bit more clearly. So yeah. I think
that's why I treated it a bit differently when I got to the D7. I really wanted to punctuate that C in a different way.
And the thing is, when he actually went for a note that was quite like definitely out of that pentatonic kind of groove, that F did pretty much spell out where it had to go, right? There wasn't a lot of options which would have sounded as dramatic as putting that F major in there, right? That was an obvious choice there.
Yeah, that's right.
But the rest of the time, really opened you up to be quite flexible what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right.
And is that a repeated bass line, or that just happening that one time?
It's a repeated bass line.
Okay, and does it change up at all, or is he just keeping that same groove going?
I mean, he just came up with that 2-bar phrase. I did, going into the next section, I actually cut off that last beat. So we end up with a beat of 8/4 instead of 9/4. Yeah, that's about it.
So you reserved that change of a moment there where you brought in the flat 2 major.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, I think that that's just a great example of a, I guess, quite an ambiguous bass line, but just the groove of it actually is so cool that it opened up a lot of things for you to be able to write. And I think that's something for a lot of people to consider. What if you're writing bass lines by itself in isolation from other stuff? It can be a great way to drive the composition. And I think sometimes people get lost for what scale they're going to use. So a very good example there that Anton's used is use the minor pentatonic scale with that second. So if anyone out there, they all know those shapes, right? The minor pentatonic shapes. If you just add the second into the scale as well, there's a lot of different options that really opens up. Just like Reece showed you, there's about 5 or 6 chords he's got going with that, right? We're playing a riff in E minor pentatonic.
That's right.
What do you have on your chords, man? You had like E minor, one of them?
Yeah, minor.
You had a D.
A D.
You had a C.
Yes, you got 9. E minor 7.
Yeah, I had a A minor 7. See, the amazing thing, you can hear all these chords I'm playing there, not in the same rhythm that Anton's come up with there, but it just shows you the flexibility of that minor pentatonic scale.
Yeah.
It's the overused scale by beginners, but it actually has so much to offer if you're using it sparingly or if you're using it in a smart way.
That's right.
Or you're using it to back something a bit more advanced harmonically. And you can hear it, no matter which note I'm playing there, all of them are kind of working against all the chords that are in E minor. Even if you went to the more of a Dorian sound with the like 4 major chord. Works with everything pretty much, every harmonic choice. So guys stuck with bass lines, there's a lot to get within the harmonic, there's a lot to push along songwriting wise, just using that minor pentatonic scale. I guess the important thing is not just to keep going up and down the scale and thinking of it as I'm going to play it like a scale in such a linear fashion. Just jump around notes at scale. There's so much to be gained from that. I mean, like anything, just no matter what you play with it sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
When you go by default to try and write a bass line into isolation, what kind of scales are you using normally, man?
I mean, I have done a lot where it's based around the minor pentatonic. I mean, there was that example from the episode the other day where I was in A minor pentatonic. So the pentatonics I find are quite good for setting a solid groove that you can have a lot of freedom on top of. Having said that, I have done quite a bit of stuff that goes beyond the pentatonic.
Yeah.
Like there's a bass line that I once wrote that literally walks down the Hungarian minor scale like this.
And in that part there, is the other instruments following the riff?
Yes.
That's what I mean, like that part there, and rightly so. It's like a very prescriptive sound. You're probably going to be a little bit more limited if you want to do something very harmonically, I guess, in a similar vein to your other idea. It'd be hard to do something like that. But that is a killer. That's a killer scale there, actually, for writing a bass riff in. Sure, someone would rip that off. Do you want to talk about the scale a bit?
The Hungarian minor scale.
Yeah. Just give us the intervals for people and show them like maybe a shape if people want to have a look at that, because that could spark up some ideas for writing some cool bass lines.
Yeah, it's an interesting scale. So we've got the root, of course, major second, minor third, augmented fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major seventh, and then it goes from there. So you've got some chromatic movement there. Augmented fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth.
Very cool, man.
Yeah.
First for root, major second, minor third, augmented fourth, perfect fifth, minor sixth, major seventh, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Very cool, man.
Yeah.
What is that one? Is that a mode or some other scale? It seems familiar with that that line of chromatics in there.
It might be. I wouldn't be too sure. Yeah.
Well, if not, there's another 6 modes there for people to look at from it, probably.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Pretty interesting, man. Very, very cool sound. I mean, what that made me think, like, sometimes there are people though who are taking scalar approaches to playing bass, and sometimes it can end up all sounding a little bit too much the same if they're always just thinking about staying on one scale. So I don't want people to take that as being the only approach for writing bass lines, otherwise you might end up with other.
Yeah.
What does that remind you of? Which band?
Dream Theater.
Oh, really? I was thinking of Tool.
Oh, okay. I think with Tool, I think more of, well, minor pentatonic, but also Aeolian and Dorian. That reminds me of songs like In the Name of God and stuff like that.
Yeah, true. They use it a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I like that scale example you had there. One of the other ones which I think is probably cool to look at, and this is probably something that will navigate you through all sorts of funky kind of bass lines. It's something that's like universally used throughout Motown, and it's based just on combining a couple of scales together. So the way I see it is, I don't even know what you would call a scale, but imagine the major pentatonic scale I played in G, root, major second, major third, fifth, and sixth. But you're actually adding in the flat 3, and you're adding in the flat 7 as well. So it's actually like combining a parallel major pentatonic and minor pentatonic together. And I'll play it in a row for you so you can hear it. Though that sequence of notes pretty much is all of Motown bass lines.
Oh, you might hear that.
So it's like it allows you to switch in between major and minor sounds quite easily. And if as a beginner kind of bass player or intermediate bass player, that's a really good shape to have. You can pretty much stay within one position there. It gives you lots of stuff to play with there. I mean, if you think about a lot of those iconic bass lines over the years, the ones that everyone remembers as being like a sick line, if they're not prog heads and like listening just for just complete shred, they're probably really simple pentatonic lines nearly all the time, right?
Yeah. Again, one example that we talked about the other day was Billie Jean.
Oh yeah, true.
Minor pentatonic again.
It is, yeah. I'm guessing I can't think of any signature kind of bass lines at the moment now, but
yeah, minor pentatonic.
Scale, E minor pentatonic.
And a more recent example that comes to mind, and it's kind of the approach that Anton took, the minor pentatonic, but with the, I was going to say it just has the 9 in there, but actually it does have the 6 in there as well. Feel Good Inc.
Oh, yeah. That's a cool one.
Great bass line.
What about I guess that's giving like some sparks for people if they want to start with the bass line to write other stuff. But maybe even looking at your example there, Reece, you want to bring it back up. Imagine if you had started with those chords. Like, what's a way you could approach writing a bass line from the chords, and maybe even with the drums as well.
Yeah.
That whole section could have had a completely different bass line, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, how different would it have sounded if it was just the root notes of these chords?
Yeah, that'd be interesting to hear, right?
Yeah.
Can you play the section for me, just like in the timings?
Yep.
Could sound cool, those chords as well, really.
Yeah.
Really works fine. I mean, guys, one of the important things to notice when you're writing for other music is there are some levels of theory that are really helpful to have, and I guess knowing your arpeggios and being able to play chord tones, that's going to be one of the key things with the bass, because they're the notes you're going to stay on for the longest. Any note you're going to hold is probably going to be a chord tone. Anything else is going to be just held shortly on one of the weak beats, or it's going to be a quick held note, right? And I think that
yeah,
in your example there, right, even though when Anton went for the more ostinato based approach, any of the held notes there, right, are pretty much in your chords, right? He's not holding anything.
That's right. Yeah. So there was a degree of certain chords being implied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that's what sparked your idea. Otherwise, really, if you're holding a note that's not a chord tone for a long period of time, you have to look at what function that note will play to the backing chord, right? So
yeah,
if you have like a C major chord, for example, and you're playing chord tones, right? C, anything in the chord, C, E, or G.
Yep.
Any note you hold there is going to sound pretty good if you hold it for as long as you want. Even if the major seventh is in the chord there, hear what happens when you hold the major seventh down. Can work, but it's a bit of a jarring sound for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And other notes in the scale, even like the fourth over the top of it.
The thing is,
it's a very different sound when you got it like that. If you're playing with the fourth there over, it's really like some sort of a major seven add nine sound, really, instead. And you're changing the bass of the chord.
It implies a different chord almost, yeah, like a slash.
It implies a different chord. And that one thing to notice with your bass writing as well, if you got to listen to whereabouts which registers things are in, because like if you got something there, we got C, and a lot of instruments are playing up high, and they're staying out of your territory on bass. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Nearly any note will work over that now. Going very chromatic there, and they all work underneath it, right? Because it's just the whole range underneath is left for you there. So you've got to really use your ears. But if you're hearing something like this, where the voicing is a lot lower, something like that, where some other instruments also in the bass, you're not going to really be able to get away with much in terms of your bass line there. You're going to probably have to play what the root is there. If you do any low notes that are different to the other root that's being held down, that's complete mud.
Yeah.
Even playing chord tones to like I guess imply another inversion, if there's another bass note there, don't always work that well.
Yeah, that's right.
That's clashy. Not really that good there either. So guys, learn your arpeggios. It's very important. That way, if you're reading like a sheet, for example, like what Reece had there, or you're working with another person, and they're like, "Well, I've got these chords worked out," then you've got a quick range of notes to play over it. Can you just bring it up again, man, one more time? I remember there's a E minor, D, C add 9.
Yeah.
So guys, it's important to learn that from seeing Reece's music there, or if you're singing any chart, you should be able to play all of the chord tones, and you should know them in a few different positions. So you should know all your minor arpeggios. These ones. You should know that. You should be able to look at Reece's music there if you were playing in his band and have like a complete range of stuff to go along with. Either you look at what key most of the chords are belonging to. So from this you can see that nearly all of them except for that F at the end is part of E minor. You can use all bass line from E minor or E minor pentatonic, or look at the notes here in the chords. That's via E minor, D major, C add 9, so first, second, and third and fifth together. A minor 7, D 7. F. So there's a lot of a million different bass lines can be written to the same section. It's just you got to listen to what else is going on instrumentation wise, register wise. That can spark a lot of different stuff there. And in terms of your writing approach, Reece, are you normally starting with other music before the bass lines? Was this more of an anomaly for you?
Yeah, this was more of an anomaly.
Yeah, I get that's the same as. I guess there's a few different approaches to which I normally take with writing, and I would like to do a video sometime about how you start with writing a song. So I think like starting a song or starting a musical idea is probably the most daunting for a lot of people that don't know where to start with putting something together. We looked at a good example there of starting something with a bass line and writing from there, but I think both you and I are mainly writing from chords first, right? That's the thing that comes first, or maybe you're writing from grooves first.
Usually writing from chords first, because the majority of songs that I write, it starts off with me playing an acoustic guitar and singing.
Oh, so acoustic's the first thing that you're using. Okay.
Yeah, and sometimes that might be appropriated onto electric guitar later, but
yeah. I guess my approach probably starting. I'm usually starting on keyboards to get chords, because I find that it's easier to come up with the chord voicings on the keyboard, and then I try and re-orchestrate it out to the guitar.
Yeah, I have been doing a bit more of that recently, because yeah, I suppose with the layout of the keyboard, you do have a few more options in terms of voicing.
Yeah, like I think that when you're used to playing guitar for so long, when you've maybe been using the same chord shapes for a while, you don't necessarily think just to move your finger a little bit and open up a completely different voicing. But with the keyboard, all the notes there in front of you, so it allows you to be a bit more experimental and not get as bogged down in the same voicings. And I guess to get close voicings as well is really hard on guitar, right? You get to mangle your hand around.
Oh yeah, but I did find that it did make some facets of my guitar playing a bit more interesting, because when it came to playing some of the stuff I had written on keyboard, I had to work out different ways of playing things, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's lots of ones where your hands are stretched like that, right? Anytime you want to have a root and a major 7 next to each other, you're going to have a nice 4-fret stretch across 2 strings.
That's right.
That's pretty deaf. That's, I think, probably one of the things you luckily miss out on when you're playing a bass kind of instrument, right?
Yeah.
You don't really need to worry about harmony isn't as important. I mean, you can get chords, a lot of dyads. You can get triadic kind of harmony going on a bass, but I prefer that to be mainly the exception than the rule. I think the bass players as well need to realize that their job is to provide a foundation or to provide some other layer down low, but it's not all about playing up here.
Yeah.
Actually, nice to play some bass at times as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you feel me, right? Otherwise, like, there's probably a lot of other instruments that do all this kind of register playing a lot nicer than a bass. I mean, it has a particular timbre, but
yeah,
not a spectacular tonality.
There are situations that it can be used, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think usually, like, if you want to have a full sound and your bass player, like, you only have a bass player, you don't have a keyboard player, for example, you can only really stay up here for so long, unless you've got a keyboard player who's like holding down like something low. Right, I'll show you. Maybe I'll drop an F sharp down here on the keyboard. Get something a bit lower. If you got something low down there, then you're all good.
Yeah.
Now let me get rid of the bass. Something else holding down the bass.
It does lose its body at that point.
It just becomes Maggi noodles.
If you want to do that, you got to get your Geddy Lee on play some Taurus pedals.
You do, yeah. Let's bring back the Taurus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually that's a cool idea. Like if you have something where you've got a pedal, something pedaling the bass for you, it does open a lot up if you want to be doing higher stuff on the bass.
Yeah.
If you don't have something to hold that down, please get those high excursions to a tasteful level, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think probably one of the things to take away from what we're looking there, learn your chord tones, guys, because that means no matter who you're playing with, if there's different chords there, you at least got some notes open up straight away. And I guess make sure you got your pentatonics down, get that that other scale I was talking about down as well. Like imagine overlaying. Overlay those two scales together. And you got yourself kind of a super scale for funkifying.
Yeah.
You can add your blues note in there as well if you want.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Nice.
It's probably something that I think we covered quite a bit there, man. Maybe one thing we could finish off with is how you see the role of bass interacting with drums, because the bass is key to emphasizing, I guess, the lowness or the energy and the punch in a mix or a punch in a song. So are you thinking about the bass and the drums in an intimate kind of way together?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I might bring up that example one more time. Because there is a bit of interplay going. If we have a look at the drum part, it was interesting writing a drum part over the bass line that Anton wrote, because the 6/4 and the 9/4. But if you have a look, I started out by highlighting the exact rhythm that he played. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then beyond that, if I had played all of those notes on the bass drum, I actually only left out one, but say I played all 4, that would instantly make it sound like 5% more heavy metal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's something that you hear people talk about quite a bit. Drummer and bass player should play together, interlocking grooves and stuff. But it doesn't have to be to a T. Sometimes that can really work. Other times you want to give a little bit of space,
Oh yeah, man, you do. Like, I mean, that's probably one of the things that's super done to death with like gent kind of music. I mean, we've done it as well before. Like, there's some riffs where you're playing low stuff as well that if it's particularly like you're trying to access accent syncopation, then it can be good to have that there. So it doesn't sound just a random choice. It shows you this is a deliberate rhythm. This is completely deliberate. This isn't just us flamming our 2 parts together and coming out with just some absolute log.
That's right.
This is an intentional log if it is one.
I usually think of like 3 tiers, sort of the gent approach, where it is the bass guitar and the bass drum completely in sync. Then below that, sort of more like the example I just had there.
Yeah.
Some things lining up, but space in other places. And then beyond that, sometimes the best thing for a groove is like 4 on the floor, something like that, where there's just lots of space for the groove to shine.
Okay. And what? Okay, yeah, sure. What about I noticed, like, say for example, in standard kind of jazz approach, there's not really that much interlocking of bass parts and drums in the same way that we would think about it from a rock point of view.
Yeah, no.
Because the bass I guess rhythm is usually a lot more fixed. It's nearly on every quarter note with small variations, and I don't think that jazz is going to start the 4 on the floor beats anytime soon.
Oh, I mean, there is that feathering the bass drum approach. But
tell us a bit more about that, man.
That's essentially the jazz version of a 4 on the floor, I guess. But the difference is that it is
Velocity.
Yeah, it's hit a lot softer. That's why it's called feathering the bass drum. And so you more feel it rather than hear it. It just like, it's almost like it just adds to the transience of the bass or the upright bass.
Okay, so it's meant to be accenting with what the bass is doing though?
Yeah, I mean, in the case of stuff like walking bass lines and stuff like that, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, just it's an important resource here about feathering the bass for everyone. Yeah, okay.
You're a dickhead.
I never said otherwise. Did I?
Shit.
I think what about starting from a groove first and trying to write bass to that? Yeah,
starting with the drum part first.
Yeah, starting with the drum part first. Because I used to write like that a lot. I guess a couple of albums ago with Hamina, I was starting from grooves as my foundation, so that I would actually, if there was a cool groove there, then the whole song could kind of be driven by that. And I think I do enjoy groove focused music more now, even when it can be more harmonically interesting as well. But I've written from that approach a lot, and I guess I'm kind of reverse engineering in a little way what you were doing with Anton. Maybe you're starting with particular accents in the drums, and you either got the approach where you can try and catch every single thing, or you can try and catch some key moments and then try and I guess have some flourishes in between parts where the drums aren't doing stuff.
Yeah.
I guess there's just quite an infinite possibilities in what you can actually do in terms of writing, because it just depends on which order you write parts in.
Yeah.
If you're writing with the bass first, then I guess you can stay as ambiguous or as specific as you want, where you're going to prescribe what other people have to do. And it's the same with every other instrument. If you're starting with just like guitar chords, for example, it's very open to what you can do.
Yeah.
Unless you're playing some absolutely feral kind of chords, then you're probably leaving quite a bit of space for people to do stuff. But sometimes if you have I guess the busier something is, the busier or the more dense something is, then the less you're really letting other people change stuff up. But that's not necessarily a bad thing as well. As we were saying before, like every situation has its merit. There are times when playing the drums, playing the guitar, playing the bass, and all that kind of stuff all together is the best part for it. And there's quite a few examples of that, like in Hamina stuff. I'll give you an example. The song "The Collective Unconscious." That one could have had a lot of different. That could have had a lot of different bass lines to it if you started with the chords. Chords. We got ourselves a fanboy.
Yeah. On the down low, I've been working on the cover. Just heads up.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay, you're playing an octave higher on the acoustic there, but
yeah.
That groove there propels the whole song, and that song is one where I guess you'd say it's all in A minor.
Yeah.
Starts on the C though. It doesn't feel like I would call it I guess you call it a C major song. It's quite strange that the chords, like it could have been very predictable. C, D, E, A, B is the notes in the bass line.
Yeah. Wouldn't it be in E minor actually? Starting on the sixth chord?
Starting on the what, sorry?
Starting on the sixth chord of E minor.
It could. 1 second. Oh no, sorry, you're right. It is. You're right.
Yeah.
It is that actually. It's not in A. So I left out that from looking at just the bass line, you could be confused as to what key it is because there's no F sharp in there. But chords wise, The chords, I think I was really trying to go for, I guess, the triumphant kind of sound. It could have been very, very boring what I did, right? If I just stuck to the root chords in the key, C major, D major, E minor, A minor, and then whatever, B minor as well. That probably would have sounded a bit lamer. So this is definitely one where the groove, I guess, is written more as a guitar groove, right? A guitar groove more than a bass groove, and the guitar is tuned down to drop A, so the lowest note I'm playing is pretty low, and there's no way the bass could do anything different on those notes. It would just sound like mud. That's an example where does that sound in tune? No. It's close enough. Let's see with that bass line there, if we just played the root chords of the key, let's see what it would sound like. I'll play the octave higher where I'm not playing an out of tune string. Let's see what it sounds like. Terrible. If that B minor was there, it'd be terrible. So there are some stuff where the writing coming from the bass line is playing I guess the root chords of the key. But first one, the C, it's actually a G sus4 to G on top of it. The D is like a D with an A in the bass in the chord, and then it adds the B into it as well. So it's kind of like an inverted B minor 7. E minor with B on the bass, and then it adds the D and F sharp in there. Nice. It's like an E minor 9 in an inversion, so you get a lot of close voicing. G to B, D, E, F sharp, G, and then the A minor 7, and then on the B it's actually just the G on B. I'm pretty sure I'm guilty of doing that chord change so many times. I don't really like the sound of the like in that example there. If it was a B minor to C, it sounds a bit too time after time for me. Yeah, so it's a good example of where, yes, bass stays simple and allows other stuff on top to change, but just go outside the box a little bit. Hey,
but I will add that that bass line is made more interesting, and you were kind of already making that point by the rhythmic aspect of it. Yeah,
and that the drums pretty much are accenting the whole beat there. Like it's not catching every single thing. It's like a combination of the kick and the snare together. There's a composite rhythm which equals the riff. There's a couple of bits in there which feel weird to do the kicks on every beat, because I think it's whenever the snare is whatever the start. It's wherever the snare's coming in. If there would be a kick there and the actual filling the rhythm out, it just drops out because it's avoiding the double hit of the kick and snare together.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of similar to what you were probably doing before, right? The notes of the bass riff are almost being all caught by either the kick or the snare.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But I think the gently is catching everything with the kicks, no matter if there's a snare falling on there as well.
Yeah, that's right.
It's pretty much you got between 3 and 5 guitars in the band. And who could complain about that? Guys, I need some feedback. You guys liking this feature?
I'm liking it. That's all that matters.
A bit of live dynamics to our talks. Everyone likes a bit of dynamics. Probably be, I guess, a problem if we don't talk about slapping the bass, right?
Yeah.
Don't do it all the time. Some guys that's all they do. Like, I guess if you're Mark King from Level 42 and you smash it, that's good. But I think treat it like you would with using really heavy guitars or using screaming in a song. Treat it as maximum dynamics at times, or to achieve an effect, instead of just, you know, especially a beginner. Don't do it all the time if you're a beginner. Okay, if you can write a bass line that chord slaps. If you can write a bass line that chord slaps, please just do it. And that song really is just following the roots of all the chords with the bass.
Yeah.
So maybe root notes can be good. I took you through this whole adventure of what to do with bass lines, but maybe at the end of the day, root lines root.
Well, I mean, I guess the takeaway is if the situation calls for almost exclusively root notes, then focus on other aspects, the rhythmic aspect, different ways of articulating the notes, like slapping or staccato, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. I think one of the whenever you're doing bass lines, guys, watch out for ringing notes as well, because ringing notes are, I guess what I'm talking about is ringing. Especially shout out to low frequency people. Don't do this.
Oh yeah.
Just remember to look up the word monophonic in the dictionary. Aim to be that most of the time.
Scrunchy.
Work on your muting, dudes. I reckon that about does it, man. If people have any questions, any episodes that they'd like us to do, or anything they'd like us to touch on, then like, subscribe, put some comments down the bottom, put some insults, put some love, write on the Facebook page, buy some Hermina records, buy some Pixels and Sound. You got something to plug, right? I saw you shared something today.
Yeah. If you head over to the Pixels and Sound Facebook page or go directly to Spotify, you'll find a link to some new old music. Basically, a self-produced EP that I first put out just on SoundCloud back in 2014. It's now on Spotify, and throughout the next month or two, I'm going to be periodically adding the Pixels and Sound back catalog until everything's there, and then hopefully that brings us to the album release.
It's all on you, buddy. Who's Ben? Plough. And Pixels.
Plough and Pixels!